Hi, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. How y'all doing today? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is. It is a stunning, gorgeous day. Hope the weather is great where you are. Hope you're all having an enjoyable Sunday. And as always, thank you for joining us, however you're tuning in and wherever you're tuning in. And our usual reminder, you really like the episode, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, yes. And share.
And share.
And share. So we're gonna jump right into this one. First off, y'all, this is my family. This is my cousin. This is my DNA blood. This is my homie. And we are autistic moms together. We just, we all of those things. And I'm telling y'all, so Brian, I'm about to be sandwiched with like two fire people. And then him. So we're gonna apologize off the cuff, okay?
That just sounds like a normal family gathering, but carry on.
So I want to introduce our cousin, Nicole. Nicole Hicks. Nicole has been engaged in genealogical research since 1997. She's motivated by a deep passion for discovering her family history and assisting others in uncovering theirs. A native Washingtonian with deep roots in South Carolina and Georgia, Nicole is a continuous learner and constantly seeks ways to enhance her skills as a genealogist through volunteering, studying the historical origins of her ancestors' geographic locations. Nicole will resume her pursuit of a genealogy certification from the Board of Certification of Genealogists in January 2025. And this is why we are in the show. Just to let you guys know before we go any further, Nicole does have a researching service called Kinfolks Family History and Genealogy Consulting LLC. I will share that website with you guys. And also, she is a volunteer with cemetery work. She volunteers at the Latter Day Saints Church Family History. Just goes on and on and on. So I just want to welcome our cousin Nicole. Hey, cousin, isn't she pretty, y'all?
Hey, thank you. Thank you. I am so pleased to be here. I appreciate the invitation and all the conversations we have had over the years about our genealogy and, why it means so much to us and, how we got started. So I'll just, jump right in and tell you, I come from, and I was telling Brian and Donya this, I come from a family of storytellers. They love to tell stories. I don't care family reunions, birthdays, weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, somebody in the Hicks family is going to tell a story. Usually back in the day, it started with my granddad. He was the loudest one of them all. He was going to tell a story. And some of my other family members had started doing our family history. When that family member, who was actually my father's first cousin, but I grew up around him and knew him as an uncle because he and my father lived together as young adults or young children, I should say. And I picked up this passion for genealogy from him. It used to be he would share it with me. I was in high school and he would share things with me. And I just looked to see, whose birthday was in October like mine's and who had a middle name Nicole or first name Nicole. Oh, I got cousins named Nicole. That's all. That was the extent of it. I was a teenager. It meant nothing. And then when he got sick, it was all he worried about. It's all he talked about. We would sit for hours and he would tell me stories. And he had this document where he had traced our family history back 3 generations. And I started listening to him and he asked me, it was almost a deathbed request, you got to keep this up. He had a daughter who no interest in it. One of my other uncles, his brother had a son, no interest in it. And I made a promise. And it started with me going to the National Archives for the first time in my life. I went to I live in Washington, in the outside of Washington, D.C. And I go down to the National Archives and there's a line around the corner and it's cold and it's March. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get in? At the time, the archives only had about 103 microfilm machines because we were still doing it on microfilm. This was in 97. And I get in there. And my mission at that point was to find military records for my great grandfather's brother, Jacob Hicks. To make a really, really long story short, I stood in line. I waited for hours. I got to see the Constitution, though. That was really cool because they had it on display there. The actual Constitution was on display at the National Archives at that time. When I finally got in front of a microfilm machine, I'm looking, I'm going, I'm searching, I'm winding, my arm is hurting. And I finally got so frustrated and flustered. There was only 2 hours left before the archives closed. And the librarian, I said, I'm trying to find my Uncle Jake's military record. And they're like, oh, well, how do you spell what was his name? I said, Jacob Hicks. She said, how do you spell Hicks? And I go, what? Hicks. That was the day I learned Hicks has 6 different distinct spellings. Never knew that. I learned about the Soundex system and how records are organized using the Soundex system. And then lo and behold, what did I find? Jacob Hicks, spelled Hix. Uncle Jake was buried in 1968 in South Carolina, in Blackville, South Carolina. He had no headstone because the mortician at the time, when they buried him, reached out to the Veterans Administration and could not find a military record because we all knew his name to be Jacob, Hicks. Well, my great uncle buried him. He had survived a wife, he had survived a son, had no insurance. So the family put up what money they could, they buried him, but he deserved that military burial. He did not get it because we could not prove at that time in 1968. In 1997, I found that record. My uncle, who was very, very ill at the time, was so excited. I brought him the information. He immediately, with 3 of my other uncles, went down to the Veterans Administration, filed all the paperwork necessary, got Uncle Jake's name corrected because I was able to find records where his name was spelled correctly. And in September of 1997, in September of 1998, a military headstone was laid on Uncle Jake's grave. My uncle who started this was buried in October of 1998, directly across from Uncle Jake. He never got to see the headstone laid, but he knew it was coming. And that was my foray into genealogy. I was hooked and have been ever since. Stories like those are the stories that we should be telling about our relatives, about our ancestors. And they exist, and they're hard to find sometimes. And believe it or not, if you take a story that somebody tells you and research it to no end, you do that reasonably exhaustive research, you can tell a beautiful story. Sometimes they end tragically, but it's your truth and it's your story.
So quickly, for the benefit of the audience, is there ever a statute of limitations between when a veteran died and then being able to apply for a military headstone?
From what I gathered, no, because once we had the record, once we were able to show there are 2 census records where his name is spelled Jacob, Jacob Hicks. There are 2 census records spelled that way. There are a couple other census records. Not census records, but there is his son's birth certificate spelled Jake, Jake Hicks. And I was able to find, I was looking for different things, and I just, everything I could find about him, I copied, downloaded, gave it to my uncles, and they took it with them, and they managed to say, okay, yeah, we see, and all of you people standing here handing us these documents, your name is spelled Hicks. We had my great grandfather's death certificate. His name is spelled Hicks. We can connect them in the census as brothers. So they decided, the military they honored that. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations, but like I said, he died in 1968. And this was not done until 30 years later, 1998, where his headstone was finally laid with his name spelled as we all knew it.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for the perseverance. Because again, in genealogy, perseverance is one of those.
Perseverance, absolutely.
One of those essential things. So I'm really, really happy and pleased to hear that for your family that did pay dividends.
Yep.
So I'm interested in finding out what drew you or what made you decide to pursue getting a certification as a professional genealogist.
So as I learn and study and absorb information, I am what people will call a continual learner. I do that for a living. My real job. I work in learning and development for the federal government. Adult learning, of course, is very different than how you teach children. And I've studied that craft for 30 plus years. Um, and I don't have a college degree. And so I have pursued certificates in my work life.
Mhm.
And then doing this in genealogy to it's more of a personal satisfaction to start. To answer your question, it's more about personal satisfaction for me, to be able to show myself first that I have studied this craft well enough, long enough, hard enough, where I can present my work to experts, people who have been doing this way longer than I have, and to be able to say, hey, she actually knows what she's doing. She actually knows what she's talking about. And as someone who wants to help other people to do it, I want to bring that credential and that professional recognition with me. I want my clients to trust and be assured that the same level of study, research, and passion that I put into my genealogy, I'm going to put into theirs because they're going to pay me to do so. I think the some of the advantages of becoming a certified genealogist is the ethical standards. I've had people reach out to me and do consultations, and then I find out they're not asking me about their genealogy at all. They want to talk about somebody else's. That goes against ethical standards. Why would I discuss your family's genealogy, somebody else's family genealogy with you? And it was not ill intended. There was a spouse who was trying to help a spouse, a woman who was trying to help her husband discover who his father was. But she never told me that. It took a lot of conversation and a lot of emails before I realized, wait a minute, who are we talking about here? That would not be ethical. Now, if once he joined the conversation, it became ethical. And I said,
Mhm.
and the reason she reached out to me is because I share DNA with him, not with her.
Yeah. And
So
that's a really important point. I just want to pause there that I don't think a lot of people understand or appreciate is that even though genealogy isn't seen as a profession like other professions, like a legal profession or accounting, where you have set parameters and rules that you have to follow, I can understand that because, again, having done private client research work, and their trees, most of them are set to private for privacy reasons. On Ancestry, I will get people sending me messages on Ancestry. Uh, can I get access to this tree, or can I get access to the records that you have for this person in the tree? And I have to and they get salty with me because I have to tell them it's not my tree. I created it, I built it, I found the records, I put everything in there, but my client has paid me, it is a work for hire. You will have to ask them. Well, they don't ever get back to me. Well, I can't do anything about that.
right.
It's not my tree. It is not my tree to grant you access to.
I have a canned message that I copy and paste. This is not my tree. This is the tree of a client. I will reach out to my client, give me 17, give me 7 hours, 7 days, or whatever I think I'm going to need. I reach out to that client, and I say, hey, this person wants to talk to you about genealogy. Sometimes it's a cousin of mine, and it's a cousin from the other side of their family who wants to know because I've built the tree, I did the DNA for them. Sometimes it's a client, a paid client, but I always let them know I can't just arbitrarily discuss someone else's family history or the work that we're doing here. Um, I can talk with them, I can see what they say, and in some cases, they'll say, you know what, give them my phone number because that's my other side of the family that you and I haven't discussed.
Mhm.
And maybe they have some insight that will help. So let me talk to them. And that's fine. But yeah, I have to do that quite often. But there are standards. There is a code of ethics for genealogy that professional genealogists should be following. And the Board for Certification of Genealogists lays that out. And they want you to understand that as you're becoming a certified genealogist, here are the code of ethics. It's on their webpage. It tells you this is it. This is what these are the expectations. These are the rules you follow. Because if you're running a genealogy business, you could surely be sued for sharing information or putting out misinformation. If you're not following those ethics, you can get yourself into trouble. And there are court cases. There are a few professional genealogists that I follow who are attorneys, and that's great because they are very much um, proponents for ensuring that you are following those codes of ethics as you're doing not just your work for the integrity of your own work, but for the integrity of the work you're doing for other people.
And again, even with my own practice, when I was actually doing a lot more private client research, all of my notes, any sensitive information was always gathered up at the end of that session, put in a drawer
Yep.
that was lockable, and the key was put somewhere that only I knew where it was.
Yep. I keep all of that information. I also offer it to my client because once I release it to you and you sign off and say, yes, Nicole, thank you for your work. Here's your money. Here's I agree, or everything you've given me, I understand. I agree with it. It's all part of the contract. We sign papers, we sign documents because you're telling me, yes, the work that you've done, I agree with. If there's something that I've done that they don't agree with, we go back and we talk about it. We go back and forth with it. And I explain, here's what I found. In every document that I find, not my personal notes, but every document that I find, I do a summation on that document, what it is, where I found it, the citation, and I give it to them as part of their package. They get a nice little booklet, but they also get a package of information, whether it's digital or printed. They get that information and they sign off at the end and they say, this is what she did for me. This is what I agreed to. This is what she found. And I can take this and run with it. They can take it to another genealogist and let that genealogist pick up where I left off, depending on how far I got. So the standards of ethics is really important. And that is one of the things that when you're working through your what they call work product to submit to the Board of Certification for Genealogists, they want to make sure that you're understanding those ethics.
Yeah, absolutely. And it now appears I have two cousins who are very good at getting into my head and almost foreshadowing my next question.
I told you we could sit with sis. I told you.
It's so true.
I'm here now, so my thing may go in and out, but yeah, I told you. I told you.
So my next question is, no matter how someone identifies in terms of ethnicity, culture, race, whatever, getting to the 1870 census is the same, more or less the same process. You're using the same vital records as anyone else does. And I just want to kind of take the course up to the 1870 census. So you've already outlined a really good reason to get a certification that is not record-based. You are learning about how the profession is arranged, organized, and rules and regulations. Is If you were speaking to someone who was contemplating, another African American or a person of African descent, not really sure if getting a certification is going to really up their games in terms of genealogy, kind of what would be your elevator pitch to them?
My elevator pitch is one of the other advantages I feel of becoming a certified genealogist is the networking opportunities and the ability to create this community of stories. And we talked about this, the more of us who are certified genealogists, who are working with other people who want to do their genealogy, but maybe we're just coaching them. I offer coaching services. Maybe you don't want to pay me to do it, but you want to be coached on how to do it. I coach you on how to find records, where to look for records. When I do that, it is very specific to African American genealogy if you're an African American. So I think I would say to them, to become certified means that more African Americans are showing their passion, their desire to do quality genealogy work and to elevate African American genealogy to the levels of German genealogy or British genealogy or genealogy from whatever ethnicity or background someone is coming from. We haven't been doing genealogy as long as many people think, you know, and our stories are harder to tell.
And I'm going to say, to be fair, a lot of people, a lot of Caucasian people specifically, don't think that we can do our genealogy.
That part.
We can absolutely do our genealogy. The difference is there's not going to be a record going back to 1750. I did some genealogy for a white client. I got her back to 7 generations in Great Britain. I got stuck because that 8th generation, they came over from Spain. I can't read Spanish. I can't write Spanish. I can't interpret the records. That's where I got stuck. And I turned everything over to her family so that if they want to pursue this, they can find a genealogist who can read or maybe can interpret and understand, um, you know, 16th century Spain and interpret and read those records for them. But again, we get stuck, but there are so many nuances and ways to find information. For example, one of my Hicks, my third great grandfather, Joe Hicks, as far as we know, born in South Carolina, one of his ancestors, one of his relatives, one of his parents, I should say, according to the 1900 census, which is the only census he appears in, one of his parents was from Africa. That's what the 1900 census tells me. Now, can't find Joe Hicks, very common name. I found another Joe Hicks in the census records. Same age. He changed his name. And then I could track him. He changed his name in 1880. I could track him to 1910, not my Joe Hicks. So two Joe Hickses. I had to decipher and figure out, well, is this my Joe Hicks? Is that? But what I did find was something very interesting. And this is the thing that the certification challenges you to do that deep dive. I found more information about Joe Hicks in the letters of the slaveholders' children. 5 daughters, all married different people with different surnames. Their names changed from Hicks, which was spelled Hext at the time, to something, to other names. And they went to Williamsburg County and Allendale County. And I think one went over to Georgia. These sisters wrote letters to each other between 1840 and 1863. Somebody found these letters in an attic in 1942 and donated them to the University of South Carolina, the Carolina Library. And I met somebody on Ancestry who saw the name Hicks, who was researching the name Hicks as well. She and I do not share any DNA, but she seems to have a connection to Joe Hicks. And there was all this information about Joe Hicks and my third great grandmother, his supposed wife, Mary Hicks. But it is thought that Joe was sent to one of the other sisters' homes to work and impregnated a slave woman there, and had another child there. We're still fleshing this out. This is 5 years down the line. We're still fleshing this stuff out. But again, to tell that story and to make sure that story is where I would want somebody who has an expertise and a level in genealogy way above mine to tell me that this makes sense. I may not have definitive proof, but I have secondary proof that this actually happened. So to be certified and to be able to continuously write and publish and have experts look at your work, because you have to recertify once you get certified to stay certified, to have them look at your work.
Can I just jump in for a hot second? Because you just sparked something in my head. So we haven't gotten into the slavery period, but you're talking about recertification and having professionals review your work. On your course specifically, because again, that's really the only course that you can discuss, is there someone on that review panel that knows how to research enslaved people, to be able to evaluate your work as a peer on that specific?
So
I
this
want
is
to say yes.
now, Nicole. This is what I was telling you. One of the reasons
Yeah,
why Brian and I just will not do this certification thing, because how do you evaluate me when you know nothing about what I do? You know.
right.
And
So I think
I'm gonna preface this by my time in academia. So I was teaching marketing and advertising, so I could critique other marketing and advertising modules, courses, marketing and advertising courses that were being developed. I could critique on them. Now, if someone were to ask me to critique an astrophysics course or module, yeah, that ain't me. That is not my subject matter.
right, right. Now, I don't know that because I never so let me tell my certification story real quick. So
Mhm.
I applied for certification in 2016. Um, Usually they give you about 6 months to put your package together, and they give you detailed. You give them a lot of information about yourself as a researcher, so that they can kind of pinpoint where they're going to have you do certain things. There's certain things that are assigned to you. For example, document work. I had to my focus is South Carolina. I know more about South Carolina history than I do Maryland history. And I was born and raised in Maryland. Well, I was born in DC, raised in Maryland, and went to schools in Maryland. I can't give you a whole lot of background on Maryland history, but I can give you a whole lot on South Carolina history because I had to understand the history in order to research my ancestors. So they gave me document work for the state of South Carolina. Lo and behold, my Hicks ancestors, enslavers, came from Beaufort County. Lo and behold, I got a document from Beaufort County to transcribe. So transcribing that document was not easy because if you've looked at older records from the early 1800s, the handwriting was horrible, the spelling was horrible, the hyphenation was insanely horrible because they were
Like
hyphenating things
S.
where you wouldn't. Exactly, those S's looking like F's and those
Mm-hmm.
T's looking like H's and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. So it was a struggle to transcribe that work. But again, I don't know that had I made it to, and the reason I stopped was not because I got discouraged with the process, but I got discouraged with my work because I'm following these genealogy standards. They have a genealogy proof standard that you are to follow so that you're doing reasonably exhaustive research, that you're completely citing accurate citations, that you're doing an analysis of your information where you can't find an actual document that says this happened or that happened, but you have some other leading or circumstantial evidence that says this probably happened. More than likely, this is how things went down because I can't find a record that says it did or didn't. And then resolving those conflicts, when you have Joe HIX and Joe HEX and they're in the same county and they're about the same age, which one is which? And following that lead to find that one doesn't have any other records in the citizens and another one changed his surname altogether. So those kinds of things. And then, writing your conclusion, you have to be able to sell it. You have to be able to sell it. Now, what I don't know is who's on those panels. So the Board of Certification of Genealogists has a wide range of people. I believe right now the president of the Board of Certification of Genealogists is a Black person. I'm assuming there are other people on those panels that are African Americans who are, well steeped in African American genealogy and should be able to say, well, her research makes sense, not because it's Black, not because it's African American, but because she followed all the standards. And maybe she didn't find an exact document that links this person to this person, which is what my research is all about, linking my third great grandmother to whom I presume is my fourth great grandfather, but I have no evidence, but I have a lot of circumstantial evidence that may help me lead. How I package that and put that together, yes, I think there should be somebody who has studied African American genealogy on that panel to look at the work and be able to clearly understand, okay, we know why she can't, there's no birth certificate for a person born in 1835, especially a Black person. There wasn't one for a white person born in 1835, you
That
know.
part.
But we see the steps that she's taken, and you have to be able to lay your steps out to get that certification board to say, okay, all right, we see where she's going with this. It makes sense. Here are all the records she did find that explains why she's going in the direction she's going in. But here are the reasons, because I have to write it up and sell it. Here are the reasons why she couldn't find those records. Enslaved people didn't have birth certificates, death certificates. They were separated from their families. But the one thing I could find is, oh, I know this woman is my third great grandmother. I can prove that time and time again. But I can't prove that this person I suspect is her father. The only piece of evidence that I had that they even knew each other, they lived next door to each other in the 1880 census. That's all I got. I have nothing else. I have him on other documents with other of his children. And in one of her census records, I have one of her sister's presumed children living in her household. But back then, people took care of each other.
Yeah.
So they let people come live with them who needed a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, and it doesn't say that individual is her nephew. Her niece. It says that person is a servant in her home.
Well, I mean, first of all, just to let you know, LaBrenda was the first female and male. She was the first female and African American to be a president at BCG. That's amazing. She never told me that. And now the new person is a woman named Faye Jenkins Stallings. She is a white woman, but she's the most recent, Faye Jenkins Stallings, because you made me look when you said.
Okay, I remember. Yeah, I remember thinking, and when I said that, I thought to myself, is she still the president? I remember when she became president, and I thought it was fascinating. I've listened to many of her webinars, and she does, and there's still a great webinar about becoming certified, done by LaBrenda. If anybody's interested, if you go to the bgccertification.org website, there are resources there. And it took me a couple years because I started considering certification back in 2012. I wasn't ready. I didn't feel like I had enough information. I now discovered I had too much information. It just wasn't organized. But there are so many ways that you can prepare yourself for it. And as you're preparing and you're listening to webinars and you're listening to podcasts like this, think about what we can do collectively as a community, as a genealogy community to start, and then as an African American community. The more of us who write and put our work together, certify and not get and I'm sorry, again, certification for me is personal. But there are so many of you, like the two of you, like others that have been on your show, who are so well in tune with what they've done for their families and what they've done in the community. If we're collectively becoming certified genealogists, this can be for us a major milestone in terms of genealogy discovery and research. There are a lot of us doing this. There are not enough of us publishing and putting our work out there. I've been doing this for 27 years, and I ask myself almost daily, why haven't you published? What are you afraid of? And it's a little bit, it's intimidating, because what I don't want is my work to be picked apart. What I don't want is for it to be challenged in a way where that's not right, because contrary, and Donya and I had this conversation, I don't know if it was last week or this week, but Donya and I have had this conversation. People are still picking apart Alex Haley's work. They're still picking it apart. They're still picking apart several pieces of the historical accuracy of his work some 50 years later. And we are so far advanced in technology and research techniques in this day and age, where we're never going to be able to tell our stories, because it's forever We forever will have people trying to erase it. But the more of us who jump in and tell it, the less opportunity there is for us to be completely, to have our stories whitewashed and have our stories not be told, because there are so many stories out there.
And that right there is the only reason why I would even consider doing it,
And that,
because of you making that claim. Like, that's the first thing that actually, for the first time that I've ever, because LaBrenda has asked me several times, Donya, I need you to do, I want you to do this, I want you to do, and I keep telling LaBrenda, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And then I look at different things, I'm like, I am not gonna do this, because they don't even know how to tell me how to do my stuff. How they gonna tell me, how they gonna critique me on my stuff, and that never one of those folks do my research. They don't know nothing about what I do, how I do it, when I do it,
I'm
why I
guessing.
do it. So
Exactly.
but
I'm guessing, and I'm just guessing. There are probably people on that panel. There has to be, for equity, for ethnicity sake, for all the reasons, that we would want a panel of people who understand. You have a group of doctors. You want to make sure that the primary care physician and the specialist are talking to one another, because they understand. One understands medicine from one standpoint, one understands medicine from another standpoint. You got to bring in another specialist who understands another specialty. I would hope that any of the entities, and there are at least 7 out there, who offer a certification of some type in genealogy, that the panels that they use are diverse, and there is someone on that panel who understands, whether it be African American genealogy, German genealogy, Russian genealogy, whatever it is. There is somebody, when you submit your package and they see, oh, they focus their genealogy on, you know, the South, or they focus their genealogy. There's somebody who understands the geographical implications of researching in genealogy. There are so many burned counties, you know, in the South. In North Carolina, half of North Carolina burned during the Civil War. South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. There are so many counties where records were burned that white folks can't even find their people. So I would hope, and again, because I didn't get to the point of having my package reviewed by a panel, I would hope that all of these entities, not just BCG, but all of them, have a diverse panel of people who are going to look at the work and say, oh, okay, we can see why this person's work has gotten stalled. But you can go out to their website also. And again, let me just make a disclaimer. I am not promoting for, the board of certification for genealogists. This is just the one I have chosen at this stage in my genealogy journey to get a certification in. Like I said, there are 7 others, and at least 2 of them are ones that I may consider when I, in a couple of years, when I'm retired and I can just sit back and do nothing but genealogy. I will consider, some of the other ones. Again, writing is a key piece in putting together a genealogy packet. If you know that you are not the best writer, because we all think we can write. I write the way I speak. And then at work, somebody says, you sure you want to send that? Do you want to send that? And then I have to read it again, and I have to think about my audience. So you want to think about your audience. So that is what the panels do. They look at how you've written it, because you have to be able to make it easy for anybody, doesn't matter who they are, to read your work and understand your ancestor story, or the story that you're telling. Because you don't have to use your particular genealogy. You can use the genealogy of someone else. And that's where I also build my skill set, by doing the genealogy of other people. When I get stuck with mine, and I've seen, and I've talked to Donya at 2 o'clock in the morning, where she is screaming about some Yedels and other families, where she is struggling to get through something. Sometimes that's when you take a step back and you do genealogy for someone else. And it's almost like you roll with it, and you start finding information, and before you know it, you've gone back 3 generations for that client or that person or whomever you're working on. And then next thing you know, the light bulb goes off, and you think, did I apply these same steps or these same techniques to my stuff? wait a minute, I'm doing this for somebody else. Hold on, let me go back. So
Right.
again, as I was doing that and going through the certification process, I was realizing, a lot of the records I need, I can't put my hands on. I can't get to them because I'm in Maryland. And this ancestor I'm researching was from South Carolina. I need to get the South Carolina State Archives. I need to get in the Barnwell County Courthouse. I need to get in the Orangeburg County Courthouse. I need to get into the South Carolina University of South Carolina Caroliniana Library. That's where I got stuck because I wasn't able to make as many trips as I thought I could to find this information. So I got stuck. I asked for an extension. I found more information. I kept writing. I got stuck again. And then I kind of said, you know what? Let me just back up. Let me stop. Let me just put this aside and I'll start over. And that's what I've done. And I've continued to research and I've continued to write and rewrite that section or those pieces of my portfolio. Um, it's changed. The process has changed. So I got to go back and understand the process. When I say the process has changed, the rating criteria has not changed a whole lot. The ethical standards have not changed a whole lot. Everything gets updated, pretty regularly. The most recent update being in March of 2024. So my plan is to go back and to do it. But I think, again, the contributions to the field of genealogy, especially African American genealogy, is going to be based on us, me, the two of you, the people who are out here listening, who are doing genealogy and putting their heart and soul into it to tell their family stories. Um, we can do that collectively through certification. We can do it in a number of other ways. This podcast does that for us every week.
So
Um,
maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. That there is no one course that will ever be able. And again,
there
I
isn't.
don't, I don't mean to be specifically calling out white genealogy, but I'm
Mhm.
very mixed, so I have a lot of white ancestors and everything else. Instead of thinking of one course being able to take me from me all the way through slavery, and even free people of color, again, they're much more straightforward to research than enslaved people. There's, depending on where they lived, like freedom papers and whatnot, there are additional records. I guess the way I've always thought about shelling out a couple $100 for a course or a certification is it is going to answer all my needs. And I guess in this instance, it isn't, because
Mhm.
up to eight, where it would be incredibly valuable listening to you speak so eloquently about your experience, those unkind of spoken skills that you would get from doing your certification. So, like you said, the ethics and the privacy rules, and learning how to write a really good research report, learning how, sourcing, citations, because Lord knows a lot of newbies don't do that, or
Woo, them citations will kill you.
they don't do it enough. Um, that there would need to be another course, and maybe a specific course about researching enslaved ancestry, because enslaved ancestry genealogy, and I'm going to say this and people can have a meltdown on Twitter, Facebook, Insta, TikTok, I don't care. It is unlike any other people's ancestry.
It's not.
It
Period.
is.
The
It's
fact that you have
unlike
to
anything.
the fact that you have to research another family, an enslaving family who may or may not be
That
biologically
part.
related to you, you have to spend an incredible amount of time researching them to find your people.
And it's
And
so
I can
funny
tell
because
you,
you come across folks when you're doing that, like when you're working with a client, they're like, "Well, I don't want to do the white side. I just want to do this." Okay, first and foremost, let me explain. You cannot do one without doing the other.
Mhm.
And they're like, "But I don't
Yep.
want to know this." But you have to know this in order to get to this. And then, if the truth be told, you might need to talk to them because they may have something up in that attic or up in that area that they didn't even know that they
absolutely.
had, and you need it, and
Yeah,
you don't even realize that
absolutely.
you gotta get it. But when you one of the things that kind of resonated with me when you said, as far as the picking apart and all that other stuff, because when I wrote my book, I sent my book to NGS, so they definitely went through my book, and they talked about some different things. And I got a really good rating on my book. I will admit that I got a really good rating on my book. But one of the main things that really impressed me as far as that was concerned is how they said this book is well cited. And I was like, oh, okay, because I was able to, really get this stuff out there. And then we're working with Brian, and, Brian, me and Brian, we went through my book. First off, me, Brian, and Sheila, God rest her soul, because they were determined for me to do this book. After things had gone sour with another book that I was doing or whatever, they were like, nope, you're going to do this by yourself, and your book is going to be good, and we're going to make sure your book is good. And they worked it out, and they, I did my writing, and I write like I speak too, but it ended up working to my advantage because we had so many people, including the lady that did my evaluation of my book. She even said it was like she was sitting there telling me the story, and I liked it. So it's always a way to like go about doing those types of things. And I get it, because you told me, you was like, Donya, if you did it, you would pass it immediately. I,
I believe that
I'm
wholeheartedly. You've already done almost
done.
all the
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah.
You've already done all the steps. The challenge is now taking one of those families you be hollering and screaming about and working that out, applying those the genealogy proof standard to it, making sure that you're analyzing your evidence. You're looking at, and again, there's some genealogists that I follow who are attorneys. LaBrenda is one of them. LaBrenda is an attorney, so they think very analytically. What proof, if somebody challenges me on my work, what proof do I have that I could say, oh, you could say you don't think that's accurate, but here's my proof.
Right.
Here it is right here. I
Right.
got these things right here that says this information is accurate. And then when you, like you said, you told a story. So you can tell a story that is fact based and accurate, but also, and there's another genealogist, like I said, that's an attorney. Her name is Judy Russell.
Mhm.
She tells the best stories, and making them colorful, but they're still fact based. And in her webinar, she says all the time, her families come from those burned counties in North Carolina and Georgia. They come from those burned counties. So she is having to craft and put together her work and her writings based on assumptions and possibilities. But you have to say that. You won't say this is fact. You say this probably occurred. You don't say this happened, because you don't have anything to back that up.
But
You
then
say
you
this
still
probably
also have
occurred.
to go to the fact that if it probably occurred, you have so much proof to
You
say,
have so many other things.
yeah, to
Yes, you
say
have
that
so
it
many.
probably happened. You can't just look at something and say, hey, oh, okay, so this happened because blah, 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 and la, 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 and this, that, and the third. You literally have to say, oh, so he lived next door, and this person did this, and this is why so and so was there, and this, and it's a whole bunch of steps that you start seeing to make
All of
this
that,
be
what they
like
like to call,
the
absolutely, they call that
possibilities.
circumstantial
Exactly.
evidence. Circumstantial evidence. But going
Right.
back to a point that Brian made a little while ago, um, in terms of a course, the best $65 I have spent is the Legacy Family Tree webinars. It is the best. I don't know what the cost is next year for this past for now, but I spent $65, and I jump on and I look at every. You just type in African American genealogy, and I'll just say it. All the greats are there. I see Dr. Shelley Murphy on, and hey, Shelley, I listen to all her stuff. I've listened to all of her stuff. So, if your focus is African American genealogy, every last one of those genealogists has given you a blueprint. Just listen to what they've done and see if you can apply any of their techniques to your work, whether it's in the same state or county, whether it's on this side of the country or that side of the country. Just figure out what techniques works for you and stick with that. Annotate that in your work, in your records. I annotate when I'm doing my notes. Oh, I heard this on this webinar. Brian has a webinar out there. Just go. Those have been my best teachers. If y'all get together and decide to do a whole curriculum around that, oh my God.
Oh, I have been advocating. Donnie and I have
Oh my God.
been
Yes.
advocating for that for ages. And the other thing
Oh,
is, and it sounds crazy considering there have been African and African descended people in this land since, and I'm going to say at least the Spanish part of it, the 1500s. We are only now really working out methodologies to do enslaved research. Beyond Kin blew up my research game, and I don't even I'd have to do a whole show to say how that just lifted up my ability to research entire enslaved communities.
yep.
Um, I'm developing the process pathways of enslavement, how to ask and answer 8 simple questions, which will lead you to specific records, depending
Yep.
on how you answer those questions. This is still new. I mean, considering how long our people have been in this country or on this
Yep.
land, these are all new methodologies.
Yep. And I think too, it is because so many people told us before, you're never going to find the information.
Oh,
It doesn't exist.
I take that as a challenge.
I do too. You have no idea. I have a slave, a plantation record from an enslaver who owned my family. It is from his son-in-law. My assumption is that others exist, but his is the only one I found in the Caroliniana Library in Columbia at the University of South Carolina. It's 120 pages, and I paid $140 to have them print the whole thing and send it to my house because I could not I wanted to study it, and it had big gaps in it, but it started from 1840 and went right up to the end of slavery.
Hmm.
I could not identify one of my ancestors in there, but if anybody from Barnwell County needs it, I am happy to let you have it, let you look at it, because it's information that I didn't know existed. I did not know that enslavers kept entire plantation records. I mean, from every fence this man built, and this man was a doctor. By profession, he was a doctor. He even has the notes in this plantation record of when he provided medical attention to his slaves. He had one slave who had 3 babies to die. They all got the flu. And she didn't know that's what they have. And he talks about how the Black people don't know about these diseases. If she had told someone, I could have saved the children. That was profound for me because first and foremost, he annotated that in a book. He tracked it. He named the children. He named the mother. He named the other children that the mother has. I tried to follow them and find them, but of course, by the time 1860 to the 1870, I couldn't. I found I found adults because they would have been adults. I found adults with those names, but I couldn't connect them to my family. But maybe someday I will. I don't know. But I have that information. And those are the things that when you're trying to do this process of getting certified and you start going, and it's the rabbit hole. We go down those rabbit holes. Oh, cool. $49 for the year. Yes, I paid 60 back in the day. It's legacy family tree webinars. And they're amazing. They're amazing. And there are categories. The categories are set up so that, like I said, when I first got my first subscription, I went in and just everything African American, every last one of them. I started watching them one after the other. Hey, Melvin, I love Melvin too. I watched many of his. I watched one of Melvin. It's so
That's
funny.
my celebrity. I don't share him. I don't share him. That's my celebrity.
I actually saw Melvin do one. I was at work, my real job. And I saw that he was presenting at 2 o'clock. I closed it, locked my door. I put my on a call sign up, and I was listening to Melvin.
That's my celebrity.
It was wonderful
That's my
because
celebrity. But
for
but
me,
we are we it's almost 5 minutes out.
oh my goodness. This has been great. I love sharing this with people because I want to motivate you. Whether you decide to do certification or not, that's up to you. For me, again, it's personal. Yes, it may give me some recognition. When I retire from my real job, I hope to go out and, work with large genealogy projects, that kind of thing. Having those credentials will help me get on and be able to do work that's going to help our community and build our community. But what I really would love to see is as many of us who have this skill set and this passion to become certified and figure out new and creative and innovative ways to contribute to the African American genealogy community. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our ancestors, and we owe it to anybody who's interested in genealogy. So I am so grateful to you all for allowing me to run my mouth today and talk to people. And
we were so happy to have you. And I just really wanted to quickly wrap up the kind of documents that Nicole just mentioned. There's two, broadly speaking, groups of documents that fall into that. So one would be plantation ledgers, plantation journals, or a plantation account book, births, births, deaths, cohabitations of enslaved people, doctors' visits, you'll find blanket lists. Who got blankets in a given year? Just a wealth of information, names, 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 names. The other one is an estate account. And you normally find that in probate court books or probate files. And actual accounting of estates, you can find out if an ancestor was hired out, to whom they were hired out. If you have a bizarre, random kind of DNA match coming out of slavery, that may be why your ancestor was hired out and she or he had relations with someone while they were being hired out for a year and they had to go back to their home plantation or wherever they were enslaved. These documents are amazing.
Well, I just want to thank you, Nicole, again for just being on the show. Brian, you're my cousin.
Thank you.
This has just been great, and we embarrassed Melvin.
I didn't want to embarrass him. I am grateful to him and his wisdom and knowledge that he shares. Collectively, that's what we need to keep doing. We need to be doing. Those of us who are more advanced are happy to share our knowledge and our passion. I know I am. Feel free to reach out to me through the website.
Right. That's what I was getting ready to tell them. We have their website up and I've posted it in the chat. And if you guys have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to let us know and we can share it with you. Nicole is great at what she does. I'm not just saying that because she's my cousin. I'm saying it because it's true. So again, I want to just thank you, and we are out of time. So I am Donya.
I am Brian. And we will see you next week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. Bye, guys.